And boom, here we are live. Here's our Casual Shooter podcast um, recap of the 2024 Carry Optics Nationals. Let me go ahead and swing the comments over so if anybody makes a comment, I can add it to the screen or at least acknowledge it and we can talk about it. Um, so I have a long list of stuff I want to get to. I guess I should, at first off, I should probably apologize to Mr. Scott Jones. Um, he waited all day for me to go live yesterday with updates on the scores and what was going on, and finally at 8:30 he gave up. So I owe him an apology. I did go live, but it was with Brian Conley on his Instagram, and I never posted anything about that, and I should have. Where I guess there's a button that said share, and I did not select it, so it didn't share. But now I know. Next time I will share so that it should go to my feed also, and then maybe that would have been enough for him to see what was going on because we actually went live from the stages. But I'll get to that. Let's back up. I want to talk Christian first. So Christian, um, oh, sorry, Tom. Apparently, Scott wasn't the only one waiting for me to go live, so I've learned my lesson. So Christian had a great day one. If you listen to my day one recap, he was a little over 23 points ahead of Eric at the end of day one. He was number one overall. That crazy fast Edsel Gino was second, like three points behind him. But then day two came, and Christian had three deltas and a mic on a stage. And I found out that his optic shifted. Garen Singleton told me yesterday that he watched Christian on Saturday fire 8 rounds at a steel popper at 15 yards just to try to knock it down. So um, there were definitely some mechanical issues, and Christian wasn't the only one to have that problem. Day one, Morgan's SRO literally fell apart on her during a stage run. So she had no dodge. All she had was a circular piece of metal on top of her pistol. And apparently she had 5 no shoots on that stage. So she zeroed a stage on day one. She was able to fight back and she ended up third on the ladies' side, but that put her in a gigantic hole. So there were some issues out there over the weekend, and those are the two biggest names that I'm aware of that were affected by it. So with Christian having that on day two, he was going into day three. If you listened to my update, he was eighth overall, fifth American, and he was 71 points behind Eric going into the final day. And look, um, we all know that that is the literal Everest of uphill climbs. You're not catching Eric if you're down by 71. Yeah. So I didn't see him ever catching Eric, but now I don't even know if Christian knows this. But when I went live with Brian, I waited till it was about 3:30ish, maybe 4 o'clock, somewhere through there. We went live. It was where there were two stages left in the day. We went live, and I was following them around. The squad 201, squad 206 had Eric, Edsel, and Martin, as well as JJ and others. Shane Coley was on that one. So They were on the other squad. I was following 201. And going into the final stage, so for squad 201, which we would call we'll say the American Super Squad, with Christian, Nils, Mason, Jacob, Jay Beal, all of them on there. Um, your top three came on the American side came from that squad. Their final stage was stage 20. And by then, Christian had made up enough points that he was actually first. I don't know if he knew that. Not first overall. He was still trailing the three international shooters, but he was the highest American at that moment, points wise. And this picture will be forever emblazoned in my head. And I heard some chattering. I didn't know what it was. And I looked down, and Christian's all the way down in the back of the stage. There's one middle target that is a partial. It's about 30 yards. It's a partial with a no shoot. And apparently he had two mics. So that dropped him from first to third on the American side. So I don't know if he knew he was in first place at that point or not. So there was some definite drama with the scores, because I was relaying this to Brian live that holy cow, Christian's first. Holy cow, Christian just had two mics, so we didn't know where he was going to end up. We had to wait for everybody else. But Jay and Jacob were within a couple of points of each other. Um, I need to look at stage 19 because where are you guys at? So Jacob was eighth. I don't see Jay Beal. I don't know where he was 20th. Okay. But after stage 19, going into stage 20, they were neck and neck. Like only a couple of points, one or two separated them. It was very close. And then on stage 20, Jay shot first. And when he got done, Jacob's like, "Hey, Jay, I need to borrow that aiming device you used on this stage," because Jay did well. Jay was at the time fifth overall. Jacob is literally right behind. Well, it goes Trace Decker and then Jacob. And Jacob ended up edging out Jay on that stage and got one more stage point. And he ended up winning 2.5. So that means he was probably about a point and a half ahead of Jay going into that stage. So had he not won, or had he not done better than Jay, even one place down, who knows how that would have changed things. Would it have been less than a point separating them? Would Jay have been able to overcome Jacob and take first? We'll never know, because Jacob ended up doing well on that one. Billy Barton won that stage. Way to go, Billy. There were some names up on the overall leaderboard, which was nice to see, because it's always the same, the Masons, the JJs, the Nils, always the same guys. So to see um, Jacob win, this means this is the fourth year in a row Carry Optics has been won by somebody different, because JJ ended Max's streak at 5, then Nils won, then Christian won last year, and now Jacob has won this year. But you also had Jay Beal. Obviously, you have Christian there. And then Brantley Merriam was fourth. JJ was fifth. Mason sixth. Garen Singleton was seventh, right up there, ahead of Max, ahead of Nils. Nils didn't seem to have his best Carry Optics Nationals. He was 14th. So some of the other names, so Garen was 7, Max Michelle was 8. Then you have Trace at 9, Trace Decker at 9. June Kim was 12. Then Shane Coley, Tyler Meisenheimer, Sal Luna, then Nils. Right after Nils came Tom Castro, and then Luke Cow. So some different names getting up towards the top, which I think is always good. It's always nice to have fresh blood up there doing things. It makes things exciting. You had the women's race was not. The women's race was not a race at all. I was talking to Justine right before, it wasn't her last stage, but one of her last couple of stages. Her and I were chatting, and I said, I would ask you how your match is going, but I've seen the points and you're way out in front. And she said that she had changed up her training and saw something different in aiming, and then she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's how you do it?" She's like, "This is so easy." I believe she won by the ladies by over 200 points. Uh-oh. Why did it do that? Come on now. Practice score doesn't want to play right now, I guess. Um yeah, 208 points is what she won by. But here's the crazy thing. Now, Ashley Robertson was second, and she was 32 seconds faster than Ashley, and she was more accurate. She had 9 more alphas and 9 fewer deltas. So she turned 9 of Ashley's deltas into alphas for her 32 seconds faster. That's pretty crazy. Um, and I meant to say something about that earlier, where between Jay and Jacob, it being so tight, what matters more, speed or accuracy? Well, Jay was actually 19.3 seconds slower than Jacob, but he had 44 more alphas, 38 fewer Charlies, 0 mics. Jacob had 2 mics, but he was so much faster over the course of all the stages that it ended up making up for, we'll say, the lack of accuracy. So in this weekend's case, speed trumped accuracy, if that's what you want to say, if you want to compare Jay and Jacob. I still don't know if that's a fair comparison, but you could arguably make that statement. I was able to meet the owner of Howitzer Clothing. Super nice guy. Come to find out, we're homies. Who knew? Where I call my hometown since 1976, he was born here in this town and then ended up moving out to California. So that was pretty interesting. Small world. And then I met the owner of Excalibur Ammunition. And guess what? He asked me, where you from, Virginia? And he goes, "Oh, that's funny. I used to live in Alexandria, which is just 45 minutes up the road." So it's like everybody out there was from this portion of the world. And then we started talking about politics because he lived in what we call inside the Beltway, which there's a 495 loop. And inside that is where all your politics happens. That'll be ground zero if anybody nukes the country. So we had some interesting conversation about that. 2 super nice guys. I'm trying to get them on the podcast. I think it would be interesting to find out why they started the back story of how they started their companies, Excalibur Ammunition and Howitzer Clothing, because neither one of them started that for shooters. So Howitzer Clothing is getting into it for shooters, but that's not where they started. Same thing with Excalibur. They make ammunition for other people and other things, and now they're starting to do competition ammunition. So interesting backstory there. I will be back up at Cardinal in the middle of August to do some of this stuff for Area 5. So if you're at Area 5, we'll be in the clubhouse there where the bays are. So stop in and say hello. I believe Jay Slater will be there. I can't speak for him. but I know he was planning on it if he can. So it's tentative. I will be there. Um, Going back to Brian Conley, he wanted to do something going live. Since I wasn't going to go live like I did last year because I was actually out there physically on the stages watching the shooting, we decided that he would. Um, and actually, Tom, it's interesting because I'm actually getting there. That's one of my next bullet points is to talk about that exact thing. Um, but Brian wanted to do something. He had already taken off. He had to drive for whatever it is he's going to next. And so we went live on his Instagram and we were keeping track of all the scores. And I was actually live streaming the guys shooting their final stage. So Jay Beal shooting, Jacob shooting. Actually, no, we missed Jacob because we hit the 1 hour mark and Instagram kicked us off. And before we could get back on and get linked in, Jacob had shot his stage. Literally that fast. So that kind of sucked. Would have been nice to be able to get that out there too. But he said that and look, this is on the live, so stating anything that wasn't he didn't discuss or say outright. And that is that he wants me to come down for Handgun Nationals and try to do some more live stuff with him of Handgun Nationals at the time. And he actually hinted at that he thinks there may only be one Nationals next year, and it might be out west. He said nothing's been signed. Obviously, he didn't give anything away. I don't know. He's obviously much more well connected in the organization than I am, but could be interesting if that is the case. Now, Tom had mentioned, and I'll throw it back up there. Thoughts on the U.S. shooters not cracking the top three? Tom, I'm glad you asked that because here's why. I asked three. Well, no, I didn't ask three. I asked two different super squad people, but there was a third hanging around. And my question was with the way those guys came in here and swept the top three spots, how does this change training for everybody? Two of them said none. And I was kind of surprised because um, I personally would think that you would have to maybe reconsider things being done because the points that I brought up was one, everybody before the match was saying, "Oh, it's in the United States, home field advantage." Two, USPSA rules. You're not as restricted as IPSC, so it'll be, we don't shoot much IPSC. We only shoot USPSA. Well, they don't shoot any USPSA, and they came in and freaking trounced people. I'm telling you, that Edsel Gino dude, that guy's quick. And obviously, wouldn't know, but we don't need to talk about Eric. And then the Thomas Kamenetchik fella. I mean, those guys were killing it. Um, Personally, I would think that you would want to. The third person I asked said absolutely. And the comment made was the first section of the match was smaller and faster than the second. And remember, Christian was leading after day one. Can't, I say that, but I'll come back to it. In the second day of shooting, those middle stages, you had a little bit more of a mix now, is what I was told. I didn't shoot it, so I'm only giving you someone else's perspective, okay? But there was a little bit of a mix, not quite as fast, more rounds, um, more points, that type of thing. And then day three there were a lot of points, 25 points more than the day before, and big I want to say 4 or 5 stages were over. Each one was over 100 um, points available. So there were a lot of points on the table. And the comment that was made was, we did really well in those early stages and not so well on day three. So maybe there is something to be learned there. Maybe maybe we need to see more difficult technical shooting and maybe practice that a little bit more. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. But Tom, I mean, I'm assuming you're thinking something similar by throwing that question out there, but something has to change. Those guys, like I said, those guys came in here and just from beginning to end, they were right there in the thick of things. And after at the end of day two, they were already top three and they didn't move. Nobody dislodged them. So they were 2, 3, and 5 at the end of day one. Into day two, they're 1, 2, 3, and they finished 1, 2, 3. So I can't imagine that something doesn't need to be reassessed. Um, I would think so. The other person, let me slap this up here. I think I remember hearing Eric talk in an interview that IPSC has more technical and challenging shooting. I agree. And I think that's what that third person was talking about was, the more technical, difficult shooting stuff is what got everybody. I can't speculate as to why Christian had two mics on that target. Did his optic shift again? Did he have to put the optic on before and just re-zero it? Or did he keep it on and just re-zero it and then he had a problem with it again? I don't know. Or did he have two mics? Look, it's unusual for Christian to have two mics on a target. So I don't know what happened there, but something happened on day three and we didn't do well all weekend in comparison to those guys. I did not expect. I assumed Eric was going to be top three, either first, second. It'd be hard for me to think he would be third, but I figured he was going to be first or second. So to see the basically the domination that occurred was pretty eye opening. And the other caveat that I threw out when I was talking to these people was, am I cherry picking? Because I always forget his name, Edsel Gino, and I think it's Edsel Gino. I think it's in that order. He was a silver medalist at the World Shoot, so he's not a scrub. Um, Eric, everybody knows Eric. I was not familiar with the Thomas Kamenetchik, and I still am not. But clearly, these guys are all CZ team shooters, um, and they know what they're doing. So, are we cherry picking and going, well, these are some of the best, but I would assume that's who we want to compare ourselves to because that's who you're going to face again next year are those guys. And I point over to my left because that's my MacBook's over there with my Excel spreadsheet up. So I would think something would need to be done. I could be wrong, but I wholeheartedly agree that, maybe we just need to have some more IPSC matches where you've got a little bit more technical difficulty and more restrictions, which would make the USPSA side of things that much more liberating and easy. I did get to see one of my favorite shooters, Ron Francisco, Mr. Limcat Racer. That was nice. Got to meet some parents of some of the shooters and stuff like I normally do. An interesting was too, if you missed the Instagram live feed, I had Nil standing beside me on the final stage, and he was leaning over and giving commentary like golf chatter while the streaming was going. What in the world? Okay, we talked about that. Um, One of my other notes was I couldn't even read my handwriting, but does training need to change? And that's what we just discussed. I think something needs to change with that. I don't know what I know. I don't know how receptive people are going to be to more IPSC style matches. Maybe it'd be a hybrid type of a thing, but be interesting to see. I am trying to get Christina Baker on here. I spoke with her too. Um, I've been a paramedic for over 24 years, and um, she was an ER nurse for 15 years. So, I've had stuff on here about hydration and things like that. And um, she has a nursing license that allows her to do it in other states than where she was originally licensed. And now she's doing IV therapy stuff. And look, I can tell you from experience that I would take an IV over oral hydration fluids any day of the week. But that's me. Most people don't like needles. I really don't care. Um, but I like it, so I'm a fan of that. And I actually got my start in this in 1987 because I was a team leader in a Marine reconnaissance team, and I didn't have a corpsman attached to my team. So I went through training where I could start IV, suture, and a bunch of other stuff. So that's where I actually got my initial training, which made me like it enough to later become a paramedic. But I'm trying to get her on. She said she would come on, and we're going to talk about that stuff and the benefits. And obviously, we'll get her shooting background. And she ROs all the time. She was ROing stage 19, so um, we'll do that. All right, so we got another comment here. Hey Dave, was there thoughts on practice score not working as well as it used to? Specifically, high available feature. I know Max had a good post explaining it. He did, and I, I do I do like the high available. The thing that what we were finding out yesterday, several of us, was it was taking practice score forever to update. Like, we knew people had just finished shooting; they'd already hit the button, and you wait a couple of minutes and then you hit refresh, and it was literally taking 2, 3, 4 minutes for everything to refresh. I'm not sure what the deal was. I looked over. Jay Lease Williams was hanging out at that point, and I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to sign up for nationals and we're shutting down the internet. So um, I don't know. I there. It seems like there's been some changes to. I haven't used the competitor app in a while, and it seems like there have been some changes that makes it a little bit more cumbersome too. So I'm not sure. And I don't want to let anything out of the bag. I know there's somebody looking to speak with Eugene about it and some things, and there may be some interesting things coming up with it. But I will leave it at that for now. But I was definitely having issues with it yesterday, whether it was just trying to update or do different things. It wasn't as easy to navigate either. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Ron is a great dude. He's been around shooting forever. So those were the biggest things that I wanted to get back out for an update. It was Jacob's been busting his butt, so it was nice to see that he got rewarded with a win. Jay Beal, I don't know how disappointed you could feel there, or even Christian. His optic going down, and then last stage, you just climb back up into first, you throw two mics, and it's like, oh, back down to third. So there were some trials and tribulations this past weekend. Um, and this could literally have been the last time we see this, because we don't know what's going on with CO and LO. So they may get separated. We may be doing one nationals, maybe not. Maybe there will be another standalone, but it'll be interesting. So I'm glad I was able to get there and experience it. It definitely had a different feel to it. It wasn't your normal national, so it was a good time. If you weren't able to be there, well, I guess I'm sorry for you. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm just saying it was quite the experience for sure. So Well, that's what I've got. If nobody else has any other comments or questions, then I am going to call this a day. And I appreciate you guys checking in, and we'll see if I can't turn this into an audio episode as well. Well, I know I can, so I'll post it audio wise as well. And look, I am not the master of Instagram at all. I try to do everything on a computer with Instagram because that's how I prefer it. But I have been doing more stuff on the phone because it lets you do more stuff with your phone because that's what it's built for. But if you know how to go back and find Brian's live stuff, you can see some live footage of people shooting, Jay and others. So you can watch it there, and you can hear Brian talking about some of these other things going on in the future of USPSA. All right. With that, you guys have a great week. And spoiler alert, Ken Cobb and I sat down last week and recorded about 4 hours and 40 minutes worth of podcast. So it's going to be about 4 1 hour episodes of me and Ken Cobb coming out. And thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. You guys have a great one. See you on the next one.